Warren Buffett is arguably the greatest investor alive today, and I agree with him on a lot of things. We've applied a lot of Berkshire Hathaway's principles in my life and at Nomad Capitalist, but there's one area where Warren Buffett, in my opinion, is just wrong, and that's on taxes. I think my team is probably tired of me quoting Warren Buffett, from "you can't do a good deal with a bad person" to my favorite Warren Buffettism that not everyone has heard, which is that if it's probably always a bad idea to get married for money, but it's absolutely dumb if you're already rich. Basically saying, if you have money, why do you want to go out and do stuff that you don't enjoy? To me, the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle allows you to get that wealth faster by paying less in taxes and therefore be able to say no to stuff that you don't enjoy sooner in your life. But that's the thing that Warren Buffett and I disagree on. Maybe one of the only things we disagree on is that Warren Buffett wants your taxes to be higher.
The tax on dividends, I've used this illustration before, but I'm paying about the same percentage of my income to the federal government as my secretary does. Now, I pay more in income tax rates than she does. I pay a higher marginal tax rate by some margin than she does, but she pays way more in Social Security taxes than I do, because I only pay on the first, whatever it is, 70 or 80,000 of income. And so she is paying between what we pay at the company for and what she pays. We're paying 12 or 13% or whatever it is of that. So we both end up paying fairly similar percentages of our income to the federal government every year. If Berkshire were to declare $1 billion dividend and my share of it was $330 million, and it were tax-free, as the Bush people originally suggested, and it would be tax-free. I mean, we have lots of taxable earnings at Berkshire. I might be paying 1/10 of the rate to the federal government of my income that she would be. Now, I can make the argument about the fact that structure shouldn't govern tax rates, that subchapter S and chapter C and partnerships and all of these things, that the tax code should be neutral between them. And I've made those kind of arguments in the past. But I can make no argument in my mind that says that I, with everything that, all the luck I've had in life, I was wired a certain way at birth that enabled me to make a lot of money. And frankly, it was better to be born a boy than a girl in terms of money-making possibilities in 1930, and probably still is, but not to the same degree. I mean, the fact that I would send 1/10 the portion of my income in a year to the federal government that my secretary would, it screams at injustice to me in terms of what the society gives back to me.
So Warren Buffett has long said that his secretary pays more taxes, and I think there's a few inconsistencies here. For one, that's largely up to Warren Buffett. There are plenty of business owners and investors who take out money from their companies. He's chosen not to do that. And I think that there's a lot of financial illiteracy out there that helps prop up this assumption. When I Googled what is Warren Buffett's salary, the first result that came up said Warren Buffett's salary is $8 billion. The average person doesn't know the difference between a capital gain or maybe money that his company makes in dividends through all the shares they get in Coca-Cola and American Express, and what he actually takes out as a salary. A lot of entrepreneurs don't even understand this. When we help people set up their businesses overseas, they don't understand that they not only own the business as a shareholder, but they're also an employee, and that they can have two different functions that impacts their global tax planning. So in places like Singapore, it's normal that everyone pays the same rate of tax. Warren Buffett has long said he pays a lot more dollars in tax, but he pays the same percentage, which seems pretty fair to me because he's not driving any more roads than his secretary is. He's going to pay a heck of a lot more tax. And yet Berkshire Hathaway famously doesn't pay a dividend. And so he has no income. When he met Bill Gates, and Bill Gates said, "Oh, you need to get a computer so you can do your taxes, track your portfolio." He said, "I only own one company and it doesn't pay a dividend." Our clients and most entrepreneurs simply can't do this. The fact that Warren Buffett is so wealthy, and that even though 99+% of his net worth is in Berkshire Hathaway stock, that other 1% is still worth a lot and can fund his famously frugal lifestyle. If you haven't made it to Warren Buffett's status yet, or if you just want to enjoy yourself in a bit more expensive way than he does, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be forced to take money out of your company in most cases, and you have to pay more. So he benefits from the fact that he's already taken some money out. And yes, he does benefit from the fact that some of the things that he does, like dividends, capital gains, those would be taxed at lower rates. But he's not even taking the money out. He's basically paying tax on his salary. And so he is largely responsible for the fact that his secretary pays more. And so it's a little bit classist that if you're a billionaire, hey, you just spend the money that you have. Not everybody can do that. What Warren Buffett will suggest is that we don't pay a dividend, but our idea is we reinvest your dividends to where $1 that could have been paid out, we can turn it into $1.20, for example. And that's the idea of the conglomerate model, that even though he'll talk about See's Candies, doesn't know what to do with the money it makes, it can't really reinvest, there's not a lot of CapEx, they'll put that money up to the top, and Berkshire Hathaway will reinvest See's Candies profits and turn $1 into, $1.20, $1.25, whatever. But he'll say, you don't need a dividend, you just sell off a little chunk of your shares every year, especially if you own, Berkshire B shares. Yeah, okay, you just, sell off, 2% of your position. The shares are worth more. He's famously, talked about buybacks. Hey, just sell off some shares. Well, now we're in a situation where you've got a capital gain. Most people owning Berkshire Hathaway, and certainly not him, are paying, they're not paying, short-term capital gains. They're getting a better deal on long-term capital gains. But he's not doing that, and some of his shareholders are, and they are paying more in taxes than his secretary. And so another example that a lot of entrepreneurs do is, I saw that, the cost of security for Warren Buffett is 3 times what his salary is, right? And so he gets to write that off. There are plenty of people out there, including his secretary, who, if they need some kind of personal service, don't get to run it through the business. And so, business owners function differently than employees, right? One of the things that we see sometimes when we're helping people move is what's a fair salary for a person to take in their own company. $100,000, we've seen examples where $100,000 isn't a fair enough salary for someone to take for some kind of international tax planning. And yet, as I understand, Warren Buffett's salary is $100,000. The guy's literally the best investor on earth. You'd think that's worth more than $100,000. And yet he said he could live very well on $100,000 because he enjoys going out with the family on the weekends to Dairy Queen. He doesn't want to go to a Michelin star restaurant. He doesn't want to go eat foie gras. And that's great. That's why people like him. But it's a little bit, odd that he chooses to live in a certain way that basically allows him to, pay less tax given the situation that not everyone else has. And at the same time, Berkshire Hathaway is also heavily involved in insurance businesses which sell families things like estate tax protection to help them pay off the estate tax bill when they die because they have an illiquid business and they have to pay tax. He also buys businesses from families who want to sell them, and theoretically people who have a bigger tax bill would have a more of a motivation to sell to a company like Berkshire Hathaway either beforehand or after the fact in order to pay that tax bill. And so my answer to all this, I happen to love Warren Buffett, and I constantly am quoting him. He's one of my favorite investors. And I especially like when Charlie Munger gets up on stage and says, we're not going to change. If you find something that works for you, don't change it. And yet I think that we should accept that business owners pay more overall, but also have some benefits. And so businesses like Berkshire Hathaway that employs nearly 400,000 people across all of its companies, they're paying a lot of money in the payroll taxes that he claims his secretary pays. Where I think that Warren Buffett goes wrong on this is his secretary is paying most of her taxes in payroll taxes, of which she will receive a benefit. Warren Buffett kind of hints at the fact of what Joe Biden wants to do and past politicians have wanted to do, which is to take the cap off of Social Security. Now, I've never heard him say that, so I'm not saying that that's what he's looking for. But there's this idea that, well, why should I, pay lower taxes on investment income when my secretary is mostly paying, for Social Security and Medicare? And the answer is because your secretary is going to benefit from Social Security and Medicare. If Warren Buffett did, declare a dividend and he took out $8 billion, right? Why would that dividend be taxed for Social Security? He should pay 15.3% between, both sides. He should chip in to Social Security, $1 billion in change. Is he going to get that back? The answer is no, right? And so is Social Security a benefit program where people, put money in, the government terribly mismanages and then gives them back some percentage of it later after they've mismanaged it? Or is it a welfare program where people like Warren Buffett should pay in $1 billion and then when the time comes, collect their $2,000 check? And I thought the answer was that things like Social Security, while obviously a Ponzi scheme, were designed to actually, give people back money that they put in. They're supposed to, help you through your old age. If someone puts in $1 billion, are they going to get, $100,000 or $1 million check a month? The answer is, or whatever, probably much more than that. And the answer is no. And so this idea that, people who make a lot more money should pay more as a percentage than the secretary when the tax code incentivizes companies and businesses making investments, to me, doesn't speak to any fairness that one person pays, Bill Gates at one point said he's paid $10 billion in taxes in his lifetime, and I guess now it's probably much more. Maybe the guy at $10 billion is paid enough. Maybe we don't need to worry about him anymore. Maybe we need to find out other ways to make other people wealthy and have them pay some fraction of $10 billion rather than wondering why his rate on the $10 billion was lower than someone who chipped in as part of their rate largely to a Social Security program, of which they will get back money in the future. Bill Gates doesn't get anything for the $10 billion. Warren Buffett doesn't get anything more than his secretary for his money, even though he pays a lot. And his companies pay a lot in, wages. What if those 400,000 jobs didn't exist? What would happen to the payroll system then? The payroll tax in the U.S., they're in desperate need of it because there's not enough people paying in to pay off all the beneficiaries. And so what I don't like is that one person who's very patriotic, which he is, and I support that, why should that patriotism dictate that we should pay more? I understand his perspective when people say, well, why don't you just write a check and send it in? Well, he doesn't take an income because Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend. And so therefore, Berkshire can't just pay the money because, as he said, well, I would be sued by all my shareholders for paying more tax than we're legally required. I've got a duty to them to protect their shareholder interest. But then on the other hand, he chooses not to take any money and then says, well, it's patriotic to pay more. He's a capital allocator, one of the best of our time, and yet the country that he's so patriotic to is terrible at capital allocation. There are some countries, look at the Caribbean citizenship by investment programs. Those countries, when you donate $100,000 or $150,000 to become a citizen, they go out and build low-income housing. They go out and build schools. They go out and build roads. They're very small countries. They need the money. That's why they do it. And, I'm sure you could probably argue, okay, they could do it for a little bit less. In California right now, they talked about building a toilet that would cost almost $2 million. And then a company volunteered to provide the labor and the materials. And they said, no, that's only going to save $500,000. We have all these consulting fees and all this other stuff going on. It's still going to cost $1.3 billion for you to donate, $1 million for you to donate as a toilet, right? That's terrible capital allocation. That's terrible corruption that, in my opinion, doesn't warrant the patriotism, but he's welcomed his opinion. And so I ask myself, where a toilet not only works better, but doesn't cost $1.8 million in a place like Singapore, they don't tax capital gains or dividends. In a place like Dubai, where the roads are better than in many places in the US, they don't tax anything. Why does the US do that? Maybe the US, instead of just having Democratic politicians take Warren Buffett's advice on what's called the Buffett rule and try and implement that everyone should pay more tax, why not take Warren Buffett's capital allocation skills and say, how do we be like all the other countries that have less money coming in and actually provide better services? Unfortunately, the average economically illiterate person are the same ones who think his salary is $8 billion and who don't know the difference between salary and dividend and capital gains and therefore simply say, oh, he paid a lower rate. I feel jealous. The average American is paying a very small amount in taxes. Many of them pay absolutely zero. And during the pandemic, it was well over half paid zero. They paid nothing while saying he paid more. And so it's convenient to lash onto that. But in reality, bad capital allocation, misplaced patriotism. Let me be clear. Love Warren Buffett and what he stands for. People should follow his advice on investing. But I think when it comes to taxes, it's not very scalable that every other entrepreneur and investor can follow the same advice or should.